Bank manager throws black CEO's dad's ID on the floor. $5 billion deal ends immediately. The air in the 45th floor boardroom of the Continental Reserve Bank was heavy, not just with the scent of expensive leather and polished mahogany, but with $5 billion worth of tension. This was the final, critical meeting for the acquisition of Origin Systems, a clean energy revolutionary, by one of the world's largest conglomerates. The deal meant billions in fees for Continental Reserve, securing the careers of everyone present for a decade. At the head of the immense, custom-built table sat Elias Vance, the CEO and founder of Origin. At 35, Elias was a titan of green technology, known for his relentless focus and the quiet confidence that masked a street fighter's grit. Despite the heat, he wore a tailor-made suit that looked like a second skin. Beside him, almost dwarfed by the opulence, sat a man of an entirely different nature, David Vance, Elias's father. David was Elias's good luck charm. For every major contract Elias had ever signed, his father had been present. David was a retired maintenance worker, a man who still preferred the feel of a worn flannel shirt to silk. He was humble, his hands calloused from decades of honest labor, and his presence was a constant reminder to Elias of where he came from. He wore a simple, slightly faded jacket and a quiet sense of calm. Across the table sat the man who ran the private capital division, Mr. Alastair Croft. Croft was a caricature of old wealth. His suit was too tight, his smile was too wide, and his eyes held a thin, barely concealed layer of condescension. He saw David, and his lip curled almost imperceptibly. The legal teams and consultants finished their final review. The stack of documents, each representing a mountain of corporate value, was ready for signature. Alastair Croft reached across the table, his hand extended to Elias. "Mr. Vance, this is a moment for the history books. We are thrilled to welcome the Origin Empire into our portfolio." A very smooth closing, indeed. Elias shook his hand, his grip firm. "It has been. Thank you, Mr. Croft." Croft turned his attention to David. He didn't look him in the eye, he addressed him as if he were an object that needed moving. "Now, before we finalize the transfer of the wire, we need everyone present to sign a non-disclosure and confidentiality agreement. This is standard procedure. My assistant will hand you the documents." Croft pushed a crisp sheaf of papers toward David with a flick of his wrist, then returned his focus solely to Elias. "And, Mr. Vance, if your driver or assistant needs a coffee while we finish the final wire transfer, there is a very respectable cafe on the ground floor." "We value efficiency." The air went still. Elias's body language didn't change, but his eyes narrowed just a fraction, the way a viper's do before it strikes. David, ever the gentleman, didn't flinch. He simply smiled gently, took the papers, and reached into his jacket pocket for an identification card to verify his signature. He pulled out his old, worn maintenance crew ID from the factory where he had worked for 30 years, the ID that financed Elias's first computer and his dreams. Alastair Croft saw the laminated ID card, saw the picture of the man in the humble uniform, and his veneer of politeness shattered. He snatched the card from David's hand. "A factory ID? This is a $5 billion closing, sir. We need proper government identification, not some antiquated union card. Are you trying to hold up the entire deal with this antique?" Croft looked at the ID card with disgust, holding it between two fingers as if it were contaminated. The tension was now suffocating the room. The lawyers and consultants exchanged horrified glances, knowing the manager had crossed a line that should never be approached. In a move of spectacular, premeditated insult, Alastair Croft didn't hand the ID back. He opened his fingers and let the worn, plastic-covered identification card flutter down to the gleaming marble floor. It landed with a tiny, sharp clatter right at David Vance's feet. "Pick it up." The words hit with the force of a hammer. Croft's smirk twitched. "Mr. Vance, you're taking this." Elias slammed his hand down on the table, the sound cracking like a gunshot. "You threw my father's ID on the floor." Silence swallowed the room. Even the air conditioning seemed to stop. Elias leaned in, his voice now a whisper. "The man you just insulted worked double shifts for 30 years to give me my education, to pay for the patents that made Origin what it is. Every line of code, every innovation exists because of the calluses on his hands. You don't speak to him. You don't look down on him. You pick it up. Croft's confidence crumbled. The weight of $1 billion mistake pressed on his shoulders. His hand trembled as he bent down, picked up the card, and offered it back to David with shaking fingers. David accepted it calmly, tucking it into his jacket as though nothing had happened. Elias turned toward the legal team. The deal's off. The words hit harder than a gunshot. Gasps echoed through the room. Mr. Vance, please, surely we can. No, Elias interrupted, his tone final. You don't get to disrespect my father and still profit off my company. I don't work with arrogance disguised as professionalism. Croft's face drained of color. Mr. Vance, this deal is worth $5 billion. I'm aware, Elias said. But dignity is worth more. He gathered the unsigned papers, tore them cleanly in half, and let the pieces drift to the floor beside Croft's expensive shoes. Then he turned to his father. Come on, Dad. We're done here. David rose slowly, pride glimmering in his eyes. As they reached the door, Croft stammered, Mr. Vance. You can't walk away from this. Do you have any idea what you're throwing away? Elias stopped, his hand on the doorframe. He looked back once, calm and cold. I'm throwing away a partnership with people who still think respect is optional. By the next morning, the story was everywhere. Black CEO wins $5 billion deal after father insulted by bank executive. The bank's stock fell 12% in a single day. Within 48 hours, Alistair Croft was on leave pending investigation. Within a week, he was gone. But for Elias and David Vance, it wasn't about revenge. It was about principle. A week later, Elias announced a new deal with a rival bank known for ethical investment. The valuation? $7 billion. Reporters asked why he refused to renegotiate with Continental Reserve. Elias smiled. Because I build clean energy. Not dirty partnerships. At the press conference, David stood quietly beside his son, wearing the same faded jacket, the same ID in his pocket. When asked if he felt vindicated, he chuckled. My boy didn't need to prove anything. He just reminded the world that respect can't be bought. As the cameras flashed, Elias turned to him and said softly, You taught me that, Dad. David's eyes glistened. Then I did my job.